That's what Hunter Biden's case was. He unfortunately has a drug problem, or did, allegedly, and he made some really, really bad choices with that, and he was charged with felonies, and that's what it. And the jurors heard the information, and they found unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the prosecution proved their case. Karen Reed and her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, in Boston in 2022 were out with their friends, were drinking a lot. They went over to their friend's house, suburban, somewhere in Boston. It was cold. And the next thing we know is the next morning, they find John out on the lawn with like a light cover of snow, and they try to resuscitate him, and they're unsuccessful.
John's a police officer.
Yeah. The young thug case that's going on right now, I mean, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my almost 20 years of practicing law.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Lawyer Interviews. We have a great episode today with us. We have Jill Coil. Jill, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we are thrilled to have you because in this episode, we're going to be talking about some very interesting in the news legal cases. We got the Hunter Biden conviction and really exciting true crime in the making Karen Reed criminal case. Jill is a very esteemed, experienced lawyer, owner of one of the biggest family law firms in Utah. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also are the owner of an all-female owned personal injury firm.
Yep.
And I'm going to let you, what else can you brag about? I'll let you, I don't need to mansplain your accomplishments.
Thank you. Well, I do a lot of things. I'm obviously a lawyer by trade, but I consider myself more of an entrepreneur as well. And I see a need in the legal community, and when I see that, then I try to do what I can to fix it. So Coil Law is my baby. That's what I've been doing. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, and like you said, it's one of the largest family law firms in the state. Then I started personal injury because I wanted to highlight females in the space, because less than 1% of all attorneys in Utah are female in the personal injury state. So I wanted to highlight that. And then I also own a tech firm called simpleending.com, which I wanted to be able to develop an ability for people to get quality attorney documents for their divorce without having to spend thousands of dollars. So Simple Ending is going to give you quality, individualized, and customizable documents that you can do right from your home. So that's simpleending.com. And then, as you know, and you found me on my social media, I've become kind of a guru in breaking down big legal cases and sharing those with my followers. And we're having a lot of fun on that, and giving the opportunity for people to kind of understand or get the breakdown of these complex legal cases. And I do it in 90 seconds. So I think people really appreciate just the simplicity that I bring into it on my social media, and it's 90 seconds and you're usually able to kind of grasp what's going on. So
yeah, I recommend anyone to follow Jill on social media, on Instagram. That's how I found her, and that's our mission too. That's what we're hoping to do here at Lawyer Interviews, a little longer than 90 seconds. But in addition to following Jill, please, if you can, give this video a like, give it a comment, subscribe to our channel, and enjoy learning about these two cases that are taking over, I'd say the water cooler talk, family discussions. And I'd like to start on the Hunter Biden conviction. So Jill, could you walk us through what was Hunter Biden convicted of?
It's kind of funny because you went straight for like the most controversial subject that I would say, other than the actual Trump conviction. I think that this is a very controversial, and I would just recommend people not talk about it within their families, because there's a lot of feelings that go on that. But
Good luck. Good luck getting my family not to talk about it.
I just choose not to because my family's so polarized in their beliefs of this. And that's what I think we should really focus on this is that he was convicted on 3 felony firearm charges. And it really puts a spotlight on drug addiction and that's really where our focus should be. But unfortunately, this is so political that a lot of people kind of miss the whole purpose of it, what he was convicted of and why it's important. Because people are just thinking it's a political grab, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, he had an unfair trial or this was unfair. He was unfairly charged because of his political prowess and who's president at the time when he started being investigated, which, if you don't know, was Trump. And then obviously his dad became president. And so that's kind of why this case is just so it's just like people are seeing it as black and white. And as a lawyer, and you see probably the same thing, even if you're a corporate lawyer, you understand the basis of legality. Like we look at the legal system as we understand what Lady Justice is, right? Like it's a scale and it's not fair. Like people always want to say, oh, we have the most unfair justice system in the country. And it was not built to be fair. It was built in a place that it is that if you are charged with a crime, that the people, your peers, will be able to decide if the scales of justice are tipped. And that's what Hunter Biden's case was. He unfortunately has a drug problem, or did, allegedly. And he he made some really, really bad choices with that. And he was charged with felonies. And that's what it. And the jurors heard the information. And they found unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the prosecution proved their case, that he did indeed violate the charge or the crime that he was accused of, and therefore found him guilty.
And that crime was something like lying on an application for a gun.
Yeah. So one thing you need to know, just as advice, is that if you want to get a gun, you need to understand the federal overarching of what is required for you to get a gun. We don't actually have like a federal mandate like database, which is like the big controversy that's going on, because if we did, it would make it easier probably to regulate, but it has become a state issue. And so because of that, every state has very different specific rules and laws for you to be able to get a firearm. Whether it's a red state or a blue state, again, I don't want to get this into the political, as you know, most applications for a gun are going to require you to disclose if you've been convicted of a crime.
Yeah.
But a lot of states don't have like a waiting period, or don't have like a database where they can double check that. So it's kind of on your honor, right? You do sign that under perjury and penalty of law. And that's what Hunter Biden did. He filled out an application. He checked no, which was not true. He's been convicted of drug charges. And so when they found that out, the application, it is all dependent on the state, on the validity of the charge, and that prosecution in that specific state chose to charge him with felony firearm charges.
Right. Yep. That is correct. And so what's interesting when you go on the political spectrum here, you have potentially people on the right celebrating the outcome of this case. However, it is connected to what people on the political right celebrate, Second Amendment rights. Is there anything about what happened here that we could argue was a violation of Second Amendment or is in line with the Second Amendment? How does the Second Amendment come into play here? And people who think on both ends of it.
You've got a majority, the constitutionalists in the country that are very want to uphold and follow the letter of the words in the US Constitution. And the Second Amendment is the most simple amendment. When we had to learn those it was the easiest one because it's the right to bear arms. But there's another sentence after it that most people don't talk about. And what is the purpose of the Second Amendment? Well, it doesn't matter what I think or what you think the purpose of the Second Amendment is as a lawyer. It's what that state has determined to make their laws based off of that. So the Second Amendment for some is just that. You have the right to have a gun.
Yeah.
And that's it. And some people don't believe that and think that it should be under regulation.
So with Hunter Biden, he there was a regulation where he had to attest that he was not addicted to drugs, and that is one limitation on the ability to own a gun, at least in Delaware, right? That's where this is happening. So
yeah.
Well, interesting stuff, but I think even more exciting. I'd like to move on to the Karen Read murder trial, if you don't mind, just to catch people up, as I think it's just starting to get national recognition, this trial. Quickly, can you go over what is Karen Read being charged with?
So I've had a few of my followers be like, please follow this trial. So when you said it was actually interesting because like you said, it is kind of gaining traction.
Yep.
So I had just read all about it on Wednesday, and then you said in this article, I was like, oh, perfect. I did a short video kind of summary today that will go up on my Instagram. But Karen Read and her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, in Boston in 2022, were out with their friends, were drinking a lot. They went over to their friend's house, suburban, somewhere in Boston. It was cold. And the next thing we know is the next morning they find John out on the lawn with like a light cover of snow, and they try to resuscitate him, and they're unsuccessful.
John's a police officer.
And John is a police officer, which always makes things a little bit more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Karen wakes up the next morning and doesn't know where John is, and then finds out that, she goes over the house, but finds out that he's not alive. And so they, quickly, the police decide to charge her with murder. At first it was vehicular manslaughter, because they believed that she hit him and ran. But they upgraded it and amended it to murder because they decided that they believed they had enough evidence to show that she premeditated it. She sat there and thought about it for a second. I don't really know how she was intoxicated. So I think that that's going to be a pretty hard burden to show that she premeditated it. But what's crazy about this case, so it's been going on for 7 weeks. That's why it's a little crazy that nobody's talking about it so much. But the prosecution's theory is that they kind of had a tumultuous relationship, that they were drinking, they got mad at each other. She hit him with her Suburban and left. They are claiming that she has a broken tail light, that they found a few of the pieces, and basically that's their theory.
Yep.
But Karen's theory is where I think legally this gets interesting, because the defense is saying that no, she didn't hit him, because they have experts that are going to come testify that the way he died, his injuries were not consistent with being hit by a car the way that they're claiming she hit. She had to back up into him. Mm-hmm. So and he died with like trauma to the abdomen, like not a head wound. It's an interesting take. And they're saying that there is this like huge undertaking of like the police and investigators to cover up the person who actually killed him. And
Right. Like a
so
conspiracy.
and the defense is saying it's not my job to figure out who did it. It's just
Right.
my job to show you that Karen did it. And they're saying that the prosecution had tunnel vision, that the investigators had tunnel vision. They got so focused on Karen that they didn't look at anybody else. So,
And one of the things I saw, maybe you can explain this a little bit. There's that's proving or showing that it could be a cover up is a tampered with video footage, right? Like there's video footage that shows with inconsistent starts and stops, and there's like a time stamp on one side and then it disappears, or it looks like it's doctored in, and it's not a continuous tape. I don't know how familiar you are with like police practices, but why, like, how could there be a bizarre and tampered with video evidence on the police's side? Is that I don't know if that's common or
well, it shouldn't be common. I mean, the police officers know that if you've got a big case like this, the the chain of custody of the evidence is going to be imperative. And if they did something, if they're able to show that if they don't have the original video, that's why if you're out there, like, evidence, like the court wants to see the actual evidence. Like they don't want a copy of it. They don't want to see something that you did off of your screen. They don't want to hear somebody say this is what they said, that's hearsay. The court's going to say we want best evidence. And if the cops don't have that because they broke it in the chain of custody, that is criminal law 101 way for defense to get evidence thrown out of court. And if they get it thrown out, the jury cannot consider it when they are deliberating their verdict.
Right. And so if that's key evidence, it's amazing that the prosecution wouldn't drop something like this, especially if they're trying to have a cover up. It almost makes it, to me, I don't know what you think, but like the conspiracy, it would be really shocking to say, oh, we're going to cover up a murder and we're going to mess with the evidence and we're going to prosecute. The chances of it going, the shining the light on that and it going back to them to bite them would be really high. And then next thing you know, there could be like a full investigation into this corrupt police like, is it really worth it, to try and pin this on someone when you're going to have maybe they didn't count on this being so national.
Well, and you think about it, I mean, he's a police officer, so there's people inside the investigation stuff that know him or are going to have those like connections of we've got to protect our brothers, we've got to, and again, could make this tunnel vision of we've got to make sure she's convicted, and if they did anything wrong, it could get her off. Since I've been doing these like true crime breakdowns, I always say like you cannot get away with murder. However, there is a way you can get away with murder, and that is if you go all the way to trial and your defense attorney is able to poke so much holes or cast such impropriety or doubt that the jury finds that they cannot convict you beyond a reasonable doubt. So, I mean, and there are some people trying it, like Murdoch. Tried, he went all the way to the jury. He thought he could convince them and poke enough holes in it. He just had overwhelming evidence, but the video from his son's phone was I think, nail that sealed that. But in this case, it's the same thing. Like they don't have an open and shut case because they don't have an eyewitness that saw her do this and then drive away. And
one, sorry to cut you out. Just one thing I want to bring up that I just saw this recently. They used to have cameras in the court here. I don't know if you saw, but they ended up like quashing any of the camera footage in there because they ended up filming one of the jurors by accident. I don't know if you've heard of anything like that, or maybe you could explain why that's such a big deal that one of the jurors was caught on the camera.
Well, because usually jurors are supposed to, their anonymity is supposed to be kept during the process of the trial because they are not, there's a gag order, they're not supposed to talk about it. And if somebody knows who the juror is, then they're going to be overwhelmed by press. People are going to want to get information, and they weren't sequestered. So sometimes in really
Right.
high profile, the court will sequester them, which means that they can't even go home. They put them up in a hotel, like they go from the courtroom, but they didn't do that. I think it was this morning or maybe yesterday, but one of the jurors was dismissed.
Hmm.
The judge brought in 4 jurors and talked to him. We don't know what that conversation was. And then one of the jurors was dismissed. So I don't know if that's the case. Once a trial is done, then a juror has the ability to talk to the media if they want. So that's, but only if they want. So if there was cameras and somebody was recording the jury, they were so careful of that in the Johnny Depp Amber
Oh,
Heard.
right. Yep.
And if, and they allowed cameras and it went really well. But if somebody videoed the jurors and put it online, that's just grounds for mistrial. And
Got
then
it.
we got to start all over. Let's
Yeah.
waste more judicial money, right?
And I wonder also what happens if you when you have a trial that maybe starts as like a local thing, but then it balloons into a nationally covered trial. Does that impact the lawyers, the judge, the security, the way they handle jurors? Like, is what happened? Basically, do you prepare differently for trials that are way bigger news versus smaller scale local trials?
I would think so. I mean, some attorneys I think have been doing it so long that it's not gonna matter. They're just gonna go in and do their thing. But it definitely plays a little bit differently because I don't know on murder trials if it's really going to matter. But like if you look at the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial,
Yeah.
like the playing to the emotions of the media so that people were on the side of Johnny Depp, I know for a fact helped him in that case. So yes, I definitely think that it matters. Yeah. The
Okay.
young thug case that's going on right now. I mean, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my, almost 20 years of practicing law. And it was, I mean, just crazy. And what's good about having these cases highlighted and
Mm-hmm.
spotlighted like that is I do think that is going to allow for a better balance of justice. Because in that case, I mean, the judge should get disbarred. I mean, I don't
Right.
like that word because obviously I don't want to get disbarred, but
Yeah.
so when I'm looking at that, like in a normal courtroom without cameras, you would never know that happened.
Right.
But I mean, that this will be a case I think they'll study in law school
Because
when they're
and
talking about the rules of ethics.
right now, while we're here, I mean, if you don't mind, I believe the controversy there is we had a judge having an ex parte meeting with the other side, or just the one side of the trial, the
The
prosecution.
prosecution and their key witness, Kenneth Copeland.
Mm-hmm.
So the key witness who was basically doing an agreement that he would testify for, a better deal on his side, got scared or decided he didn't want to testify and kept invoking his Fifth Amendment right. The prosecution, obviously, it's a pretty big crux in their case to get him to testify to what they had agreed to for this huge RICO case. Young Thug being just one of the, I think, 89 defendants or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the judge decided to have a secret meeting early in the morning before courts with the prosecutor and this witness. I mean, talk about impropriety,
Insane.
just talking to a witness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
witness tampering, like we're not supposed to do it. So what are you? And then to not tell the defense counsel about it or to not put it on the record.
Right.
And then when Brian Still, Young Thug's attorney, which he's gonna be famous
I
from
was
this
gonna
after
say,
this.
yeah.
He'll get a book deal, like he'll make so much money after this. But for him to then call out the judge, which
Yep.
as you know, I mean, you're a corporate attorney. I go in front of judges all the time. You don't want to piss off the judge.
No,
Like you
no,
want
no,
to be
no.
respectful. You want the judge to like appreciate and respect you. Because as much as we don't want to say it, it matters.
Yeah. If you want to go for the judge, you better not miss, I guess is the way to put it. So
Right. And he went and he said, "Why did I not know about this?"
mhm.
The judge was like, "How did you know about my secret meeting in my chambers?" I mean,
Crazy.
and Brian was like, "That doesn't matter. Why are
Yeah.
you doing this? I want the transcript of this meeting." And the judge hounded
Uh,
him, said, "You need to tell me your informant. How did you find out about this?" And Brian refused, and the judge sent him to jail. Held him in
Incredible.
contempt.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, badass is the only way to put it. Really, is and like you said, this guy will now be a celebrity. And if it weren't for this, if just imagine, like, who knows how he had, like, what if he had like a secret camera in there or something, and it didn't come out this way. Like, it could have totally backfired on this Steele guy. However,
I
he's
mean,
getting
I think it was the clerk
okay.
who knew it was wrong,
Okay. Well, that's great. I mean,
but the
like, it's
clerk
like a
didn't want to
whistleblower.
lose their job
Mm-hmm.
and was scared to death. I think a clerk did what was right.
Well,
And
if we see
even though it
any,
was very, very hard.
if
And
we
Brian was honorable in protecting that person. That's just my belief. It's totally speculative, but that's
totally no, that sounds more realistic than my mind. But I mean, if clerks start disappearing like Boeing whistleblowers, then then we'll know what's going on there. Well, anyway, we are just out of time here. Jill, thank you so much. This was really was a lot of fun. So thank you for doing this.
yeah.
And everyone, if you liked the video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, Lawyer Interviews, and we'll see you next time.